I did not like Yooka-Laylee. Which sucks because I really wanted to like it. I love the Banjo-Kazooie franchise. That includes the characters, art style, humor, music, and the platformer collectathon genre as a whole. When it was announced that Playtonic, a studio founded by multiple former Rare employees who were involved with the creation of Banjo-Kazooie, were making a spiritual successor, I was ecstatic. While I couldn't afford to chip into the Kickstarter campaign, when Yooka-Laylee released in 2017, I bought it and played it immediately. I went in excited, optimistic, and by the end, ultimately, I was left disappointed. While the game later got some much needed fixes with the Spit and Polish update, Yooka-Laylee had some fundamental issues that I couldn't get past. It's now been 8 long years since that original game's release, and Playtonic has been fairly busy. They've supported Yooka-Laylee as a franchise, released a sequel, and now they've put together a remake or remaster. I got a review copy of Yooka-Replaylee, and after working my way through the game, I gotta say, this game is kind of awesome. If you want to go in without hearing any specifics, then just go play it. I do think it's worth checking out. Now, if you want to hear what issues I had with the original game, and the countless ways Replaylee has changed and fixed things, then listen on. First off, the opening. In the original, I did not like how the game presents the main conflict. Capital B and Dr. Quack have a plan to capture some special book, and our protagonists just happen to live a short walk away, just happen to have this special book, and just so happen to decide that this book is valuable enough to embark upon an adventure to collect all of its pages. While the duo comes across as likable, their call to adventure is so arbitrary that it's somewhat laughable. The player is given no real reason to care about these characters or their ensuing adventure. And people told me that the plot doesn't matter. Well, Yooka-Replaylee shuffles these elements and adjusts the writing in a really good way. Rather than starting with the cutscene revealing the bad guys, instead you're treated to a storybook retelling of Yooka and Laylee wrecking their ship, doing some repairs, and then take control as they head off in search of more treasure in an underground cavern. This new intro gives us some nice and quick characterization for the duo, and this level serves as a much better tutorial than the original game's Road to the Tower. At the end, they find the one book locked away in a cage. Its ability to float and speak already display its importance, but its claim of being able to rewrite reality is immediately tested and confirmed by Laylee penciling in a new and improved moveset. This shifts the goal from, let's retrieve this thing that might be important, to, hey, let's retrieve this insanely valuable thing, which also basically asked for our help, and while we're pirates, we're not monsters, so we're gonna go on this mission. The return trip through the caves allows the player to experiment with their new moves, which are basically the original game's full moveset, with better handling and some refined animations. The path also takes us up through Dr. Quack's sad little office, which helps build out his role as the unappreciated brains of the operation, while also selling the idea that we're heading into enemy territory, which the original game didn't do very well. There, you go on a very short walk, and then Dr. Quack tells you to leave, and then you just waltz right into the building. Now, it's Mr. Trousers whose smooth talking gets us in. It's a small change, but it works for both characters. Dr. Quack seems gullible and kinda dumb, and Trouser gets to look clever and be established as an ally worth having. Moving forward, we jump into Tribal Stack Tropics. Like the rest of the worlds in Replaylee, it's expanded from the start, which eliminates another issue I had with the original game. While expanding each storybook world seems like a cool mechanic, it felt like it wasn't impactful enough to warrant its existence. Instead, expanding the levels felt like making them go from too small to the correct size, which isn't very satisfying. That and the fact that you start with your full moveset means that you can collect everything in a world before moving on. This might not appeal to everyone, but I think this makes for a much better and more satisfying experience. Another massive difference, which I should definitely point out, is the visuals. Keep in mind that you're seeing Yooka-Laylee on max graphics on the PC and Yooka-Replaylee on the Switch too. You would think that would give the original a leg up, but not at all. Yooka-Laylee's art style wasn't bad, but the visuals just kind of felt off to me. Some lights were too bright, some shadows too dark, and anything not in direct sunlight would look washed out, which didn't feel correct in an otherwise colorful game. In Replaylee, you can tell that this has been addressed by the position of the sun in Tribal Stack Tropics, which helps a lot, but then also in a bunch of other ways. When in shadow, characters aren't desaturated, they've done a pass and added a much needed coat of pre-baked shadows, which is obvious in the grooves between rocks where bricks meet in the dried up aqueduct, and so on. Throughout the game, the textures have been improved or redone to better fit their environments, and in general, there's more polygons on display. Just look at that grass. That's some good stuff. Besides that, bushes, especially dense one, look more natural, and the small shrubbery is now actually walkable, which is crazy. Did you know the original game, you couldn't cleanly walk through the bushes? They had collision, which just felt like a mistake. In Replaylee, the surface of water is more clear, and the visual effect while underwater looks way better. I get what they're going for with the original, but the rippling was just a bit too much. Replaylee also has a more shallow depth of field, so farther away objects are blurrier with a bit more bloom on light sources. It's very possible to adjust the depth of field too far, but I think Replaylee has a pretty good level here. Next, I'm going to let my past self speak about the quills, but this time I will have more fitting footage in the background. First off are the quills, which are currency for Trouser the Snake, who teaches the duo new abilities. There's 200 of them to collect in each world. Some of them are placed in a way that encourages exploration, leading the player to different sections of the game. However, many are just shoved into every corner and hole possible without much thought put into it. After a certain point, it becomes an exercise in frustration to track down each one. Now, they're grouped into lines or squares and placed out of the way, behind stuff, or generally off the beaten path. This makes them harder to spot, but paradoxically, easier to find because there's now more logic to their locations. Perhaps one of the biggest changes from the original to Replaylee is Rextro's Arcade. In the original game, I absolutely loathed these minigames. To me, they felt kinda like knockoff Mario Party minigames. I appreciate that it takes a lot of effort to make a bunch of individual minigames with their own mechanics, art, and all that, but it just didn't work or feel good. But now, oh man, Rextro's arcade games feel like what was most likely imagined when the character was created. You play as Rextro in a sort of isometric platformer where you chomp your way through the level in search of medals so you can go on and become the Chompion. The music, the visuals, it's all fantastic. I'm only showing bits from the level accessible in Treble Stack Tropics, but I'll note that later levels build upon these simple mechanics beautifully. I honestly believe that if all of Rextro's levels in Replaylee were slightly refined and built upon, Playtonic could honestly release a whole Rextro game, and I would be pretty down for that. They've also added Mark the Bookmark, a new character who facilitates fast traveling via the new map feature. He'll also mark the location of pages for 50 quids. Alongside the map is a numbered and labeled list of each pagey. While this is all quite helpful, I do recognize that this changes the overall vibe of the game. Very legitimate arguments could be made in favor or against having these things in the game. It all just comes down to personal preference. For me, for this game, I think they're good additions. Another change that might upset people is the moveset. Things have been radically overhauled from the original. In it, you would gradually unlock abilities from Trouser using quills. Now, you have your entire moveset available from the start. This shifts the game from feeling like Banjo-Kazooie to Super Mario 64. Additionally, moves like Flappy Flight and Sonar Shield are now situational slurp state abilities. While I had no issue with Sonar Shield, I'm very glad that Flappy Flight is no longer usable anywhere, as it completely trivialized platforming once unlocked. It did help with backtracking, but the fast travel system covers that use case. Overall, I think this is a positive change. Sure, now you no longer have new moves to look forward to during your playthrough, but you can instead feel like your skills are growing as you go. The controls for most abilities have been tuned to feel better, so I think there's more skill expression in this game. You're also not limited by stamina as much in the first game, making the reptile roll and rush so much more satisfying to use. I never would have wanted to use it during platforming before, but now it's expected if you want to complete some of the game's more difficult time trials. Going back to enemies, their behavior is way better now. In the original game, the corplets were coded to spot the player, shout, move into position, and then charge the player. Like most things, they would die in one hit, so the combat felt awkward and slow. In Replaylee, they won't waste time and instead rush the player all at once. They also take a couple hits to die, each hit releasing a quid or coin. While this sounds like it would slow things down and ruin the fun, I think it does the opposite. Since you can tail twirl repeatedly, you can easily mess up entire hordes of enemies, all while getting nice and satisfying feedback with the coins and visual effects flying all over the place. While enemies do get more imposing later on, the combat remained fun and engaging because it never became a chore. Even if I was killing these enemies again and again, at least I was getting quids, so I always welcomed the combat. Speaking of, let's talk quids. They're a brand new currency added in Replaylee that can be found just about anywhere, and it's awesome. Whether you're navigating old or new areas, running through bushes, breaking objects, or defeating enemies, it all just feels productive and rewarding. There is definitely something to be said about the fact that I'm favoring a mechanic that involves keeping me constantly stimulated, and how that doesn't probably bode well for my attention span, but oh well. It feels good, and I think it's a good addition to the game. All that said, these gold coins can be used to purchase hints from Mark, and a variety of tonics and cosmetics from the kind but ever disturbing looking vendee. I will only show the inventory as it shows without collecting any pages, as being surprised by what you can unlock is a big part of the fun. In general, the cosmetics are all pretty cool, and the tonics can offer some interesting changes to gameplay, though they never quite felt all that impactful or surprising. Onwards, I won't get too deep into it, but in general, shoutouts to the music. It was one aspect of the original game that I had absolutely no issues with, and Yooka-Laylee features that same music but re-recorded by the Prague Philharmonic Orchestra, which sounds fantastic. Now that we've looked at a number of improvements in Yooka-Replaylee, let's talk about some of the negatives because they do exist. These might be temporary issues or platform specific. My playthrough was done on the first version of the game before any day one patch, so these aren't exactly marks against the game, but instead, just things I wanted to mention. The game crashed a lot, perhaps like once every world, so 4 to 6 times across my playthrough. Frustrating, but the game would autosave, so it never bothered me all that much. A couple times I did lose my ability to jump. This happened the first time I entered Travel Stack Tropics and spoke to Trouser, which is weird, and I was forced to quit the game and reopen it. The animation for collecting a Pagey feels a bit sloppy, mainly due to the animation jumping back to an A pose rather jarringly. At least a couple times I went to do a buddy slam onto a button only to get stuck mid-air for a bit before the slam would occur. And I noticed that when swimming in the snow world, whenever the camera moved into what should be solid terrain, everything would get cold, which doesn't technically break anything, it just is a weird interaction and looks wrong. Also, when I was in the Isometric Palace, I collected a Pagey and the game sort of broke, allowing me to freely move the camera and see the rest of the level, which was definitely not intended. Oh, and this is not a bug, but more of a gripe. The Cardos challenge has no option for quit challenge and go back to the game, so you're forced to leave the world or wait out the ride until the end. I actually made the mistake of leaving the world mid-attempt after earning 2 Pageys, but since I never picked up those Pageys, I was forced to redo the challenge. That's pretty frustrating, and it should definitely have a quit challenge option like Rextra's Arcade. And last but not least, and definitely most weird, I found some buggy enemies high on a cliff in the second world. They can't really move very well, and have an out of place red arrow on them. It kind of feels like debug enemies that got overlooked, but oh well. So, all of these things should be addressed, but overall, I thought Yooka-Replaylee was better polished than Yooka-Laylee on launch. And as a whole, I think Replaylee delivers on a much better experience than the first game. And this is kind of the game I was hoping for in the first place. It's fun, it's lighthearted, in general, it has a better flow to it. No doubt there will be people that prefer the original, but to me, who didn't enjoy the original, I think this is now the definitive version, so they won me over. Good job, guys. Anyways, that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. And a library-sized thanks goes to Shay for being a super fan. If you enjoyed this video, why not leave a like, maybe subscribe, and check out my other stuff. I have done a couple videos on Yooka-Laylee, but if you want some positive content, then check out my various videos on Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Nuts and Bolts, all that stuff. That's it for this one. Goodbye. Have a nice day.